My name is Joel. I'm 24, and at the time of this, I was in my second year of a postgraduate degree, living alone in a small one-bedroom flat on the third floor of a student apartment block. There were maybe 30 units in the building across 4 floors. I knew maybe 4 people by face. Everyone else was just a door. I want to be clear about something before I get into this. I'm not someone who gets easily rattled. I grew up in a rough part of the city. I've dealt with difficult situations my whole life, and I've always considered myself reasonably good at reading people. I say that because what made all of this so unsettling wasn't just what was happening. It was the fact that I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, even when I had no solid reason to feel that way. That instinct turned out to be right. It started in October, about 6 weeks into the new academic year. I was coming back late from the library, probably around 11 at night, and as I stepped out of the lift onto my floor, there was a man standing in the hallway. He was standing maybe 4 doors down from mine, facing my direction. He was tall, mid-30s maybe, with a shaved head and a gray zip-up jacket. He wasn't doing anything. Not knocking on a door, not on his phone, not walking anywhere. He was just standing there. When I stepped out of the lift, he looked at me. I nodded, he didn't respond, and I walked to my flat and went in. I assumed he was locked out of his room or waiting for someone. The following week, I saw him again. Same floor, same end of the hallway, different time of night. This time it was closer to midnight. I'd been up late writing and went to the communal kitchen at the end of the hall to make tea. He was standing near the window at the far end, again, not doing anything in particular. He looked at me the moment I came out of my door, which meant he'd been facing my direction before I appeared. I made my tea, came back, and locked my door. I asked the guy across the hall from me if he knew who the man was. He said he didn't recognize the description. As far as he was aware, no one on our floor matched it. Said the man might be from one of the other floors. I let it go. Told myself it was just someone who liked standing in hallways for whatever reason. Strange, but not threatening. Then I started finding things outside my door. The first time was a coffee cup, a takeaway cup from the cafe on campus, still faintly warm, sitting directly in front of my door. No note, no name. I assumed it was left for the wrong flat and moved it to the side of the hallway. 4 days later, a paperback book was placed outside my door. It was a novel, the kind of literary fiction you'd read on a course like mine. There was no note, no name written inside. I stood in the hallway holding it for a while, trying to work out if someone was being friendly or if something else was going on. I knocked on the doors either side of mine. Neither of them had left it. Neither of them had seen anything. A week after the book, I found a photograph. It was face down on my doormat, which meant someone had slid it under the door. It was a printed photograph of the view from what appeared to be a window at night, looking out at a car park. I recognized the car park immediately. It was the one directly behind our building, but what made my stomach drop was the reflection in the window. You could see, very faintly, a lit room behind the camera. And in that lit room, visible in the reflection, was what appeared to be a person sitting at a desk, facing a screen. At the angle and the floor level, the only room it could have been was mine. Someone had photographed my window from across the car park and then printed it and posted it under my door. I went straight to the building manager the next morning and told them everything. They checked the entry logs for the building and confirmed that someone had been using a fob that wasn't registered to any current tenant. A maintenance fob that should have been returned at the end of the previous year. They canceled it immediately and said they'd review the CCTV. The footage showed a man in a gray zip-up jacket entering the building on several occasions over the previous month, always late at night. His face was partially obscured each time. I moved out of that building 3 weeks later, staying with a friend while I sorted a new place. I never found out who he was or what he wanted. What I couldn't stop thinking about, and still can't, is how long it might have been going on before those 6 weeks. The previous tenant in my flat had left mid-year without explanation. I never found out why. I need to start by saying I know how this sounds. I know that when you tell people something like this happened online first, a lot of them stop taking it seriously. I'm asking you to hear it out. My name is Priya. I'm 27. About 8 months ago, I matched with someone on a dating app. His profile looked completely normal. A few photos, a bio that was reasonably written, nothing obviously off. We exchanged maybe a dozen messages over 2 days. Standard stuff. What he was studying, where he was from, what kind of food he liked. Nothing that felt strange at the time. But after those 2 days, I stopped responding. Not for any dramatic reason. I just went quiet on that app generally. I wasn't feeling it anymore, and I let the conversation lapse. It happens all the time. I didn't think anything of it. About a week later, I got a follow request on my personal Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture, no posts, no followers. I declined it. 3 days after that, I got another request from a different account with a slightly different username, but the same format. I declined it again and forgot about it. Then I started getting emails. The first one was from a generic-looking Gmail address, just a string of numbers and letters. The email said one sentence. It said, "I just wanted to say it was really nice talking to you." No name, no context. I deleted it and blocked the address. A week later, another email from a different address with the same structure. This one said, "I've been thinking about what you said about the Italian place on the high street." I went cold when I read that. I had mentioned a restaurant in that conversation on the dating app, just in passing. A throwaway detail. I hadn't thought about it again, but he had kept it. I went back to the dating app to find the conversation, and his profile was gone. I reported everything I had to the app and to the email provider, and got automated responses from both. For about 3 weeks after that, nothing happened. No emails, no follow requests, nothing. I started to feel like it was probably over, that whoever it was had got bored and moved on. And then I was walking home from work on a Thursday evening, and I saw him. I recognized him from his profile photos. He was standing outside a pharmacy about 2 minutes from my flat. He wasn't looking at his phone, wasn't doing anything. When I walked past, he looked directly at me. I kept walking at the same pace and didn't react. When I got to my building, I went in and straight upstairs. I stood at my window and looked down at the street. He wasn't there. I told myself it was a coincidence. He might have lived in the area. He might have been there for any reason. The following Tuesday, I came out of the tube station near my office, and he was there, standing near the entrance. He saw me immediately. Again, I kept walking. My heart was going fast, but I didn't look back. I told a friend everything, and she came and stayed with me for a few nights. I also reported it to the police, who took a statement and told me they'd look into it, but that without direct contact or a threat, there wasn't a great deal they could do immediately. The emails started again that weekend. This time, the subject line of each one was blank. The body of the first one said, "I'm not trying to scare you." The second one said, "I just want to talk." The third one, sent 40 minutes later, said, "I saw you today. You looked tired. I hope you're okay." That last one was the one that broke me, because I hadn't seen him that day, which meant he had seen me without me seeing him. I moved in with my parents for 6 weeks. In that time, the emails stopped. The follow requests stopped. I had no sightings. When I eventually came back to my flat, I had a new lock fitted, and I changed my routine substantially. New route to work, different tube stops, different times. I haven't seen him since. It's been about 5 months. I'm back to feeling mostly normal during the day. Nights are harder, especially when my phone lights up with a notification I'm not expecting. That half second before I check what it is still gets me every single time. This happened when I was working as a fitness instructor at a mid-sized gym in the suburbs. I'd been there about 3 years at that point, and I genuinely loved the job. I knew most of the regulars by name. It was that kind of place. About 18 months ago, we took on a new member. His name was Marcus. He was in his late 40s, quiet, polite, came in every weekday without fail. Nothing unusual about him at first. He mostly used the wait section and kept to himself, the kind of member you barely notice. After about a month, he started booking personal training sessions. He was assigned to me. He was a good client in the sense that he showed up on time, worked hard, didn't complain, but there was something about the way he interacted with me that never felt quite right. He asked a lot of questions, not about training, about me. Small things at first, where I grew up, whether I had siblings, what I did on my days off. I kept it light and professional and redirected back to the session. Most clients make small talk. I didn't flag it. But the questions kept coming, and they kept getting more specific. He remembered things I'd mentioned weeks earlier in passing and brought them back up in later sessions. He knew I'd mentioned once that I drove a specific route home. He knew I'd said I sometimes stopped at the petrol station on the retail park after late shifts. These weren't significant things, but the fact that he'd cataloged them and held onto them made me uncomfortable in a way I found hard to articulate. I mentioned it to my manager, who suggested I raise it with Marcus directly if it happened again. It wasn't enough to reassign him at that point. Then, one Friday after closing, I was locking up the staff room when I found something on the bench by my locker. A folded piece of paper. My name was written on the outside in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a printed screenshot of my personal Facebook profile, not my work page, my personal one, which was set to private. Someone had accessed it or been shown it by a mutual contact. There was no message, just the screenshot. I showed my manager immediately. CCTV was reviewed and showed Marcus entering the changing room adjacent to the staff area just after 9 that evening, shortly before closing. He shouldn't have been in that section of the building at all. His membership was suspended the same night, and he was sent a formal letter. I thought that would be the end of it. 4 days later, I was leaving the gym at the end of a close shift, just before 10. The car park was mostly empty. I was walking to my car when I noticed a figure sitting in a dark saloon car near the exit. I couldn't see clearly, but the car hadn't been there when the last member left. As I got into my own car, the saloon started its engine. I left the car park and drove in the direction away from my usual route home. The car followed me for 2 junctions before I turned into a petrol station and went inside. I stood inside for about 12 minutes. When I came back out, the car wasn't on the road. I called the police that night and gave them everything: the paper in the staff room, the CCTV, the car. They said they'd contact Marcus in relation to the incident at the gym. I don't know what was said to him or whether they followed through. What I do know is that 2 weeks later, a colleague told me Marcus had submitted a formal complaint against the gym, claiming his membership had been canceled without due cause. He wanted it reinstated. The gym refused, and the complaint went nowhere. I transferred to a different branch about a month after that. Different area, different commute, different regulars. I've been there 6 months now and nothing has happened. But I transferred partly because I kept catching myself checking the car park before I left each night. And I realized I was doing it automatically, the way you do something you've been doing long enough that it stops feeling like a choice. I'm still doing it at the new branch. I don't think that part goes away quickly.
My ex dumped me at a crowded Thai restaurant on a Tuesday night. 3 years down the drain in like 5 minutes, and he literally just stood up and left me sitting there with the appetizers. I was trying so hard not to make a scene in front of everyone, so I just threw some cash on the table and basically sprinted outside. I pulled out my phone to get a ride, but I knew I couldn't handle a normal Uber. That feeling when you're holding back tears, and if a driver even looks at you in the mirror or asks, "How's your night going?" you're just going to completely lose it. I couldn't do it. So I spent the extra money and ordered one of those driverless auto cabs. I stood on the curb shivering for 10 minutes, but when it finally pulled up and the doors unlocked, it was exactly what I needed. No driver, no awkward small talk. Just empty seats and a little tablet screen in the back. I practically threw myself inside. The second the doors locked and the car started driving, I curled up against the cold window and just bawled my eyes out. It was pathetic, but honestly, it was the first time all night I felt like I could actually breathe because nobody was watching me. I cried for maybe 10 minutes straight, just totally letting go. Once I finally ran out of steam, I sniffled and sat up to check the little tablet mounted on the side back to see how far I was from my apartment, but the map was gone. Instead, there was this little orange steering wheel icon spinning on the screen, and underneath it, the text read, "Manual remote operator engaged." I frowned and looked up at the front. The actual steering wheel was turning back and forth on its own, but it wasn't smooth like the AI usually drives. It was jerky, aggressive, like someone playing a racing game on a laggy connection. Suddenly, the car's speakers crackled. It wasn't the polite robot voice. It was the sound of someone breathing. Then a guy cleared his throat, followed by the heavy, echoing clack, clack, clack of a mechanical keyboard. Honestly, I wasn't even scared at first. I was just exhausted. I figured there was construction or a bad detour ahead, and some bored tech support guy at the company's call center had to remotely take over the driving for a few miles. I just wiped my nose with the back of my sleeve, leaned my head against the cold window, and ignored it. I just tried to focus on my breathing, waiting for the manual operator alert to clear so the AI could take back over. But after what felt like 20 minutes, I realized the streetlights outside the window were getting further apart. The buildings were getting lower and grittier. I sat up and checked the tablet screen again. The little blue route line had completely changed. It wasn't pointing toward my apartment in the city center anymore. It was dragging us way out toward the industrial park by the old shipping yards, a place that is basically a ghost town after 8 p.m. Panic finally flared in my chest, hot and sharp. I leaned forward toward the partition. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey man, you're going the wrong way. My stop was miles back." Over the speaker, the frantic typing finally stopped. There was a long, heavy pause. The guy didn't say a word. Instead, he just started humming. It was a low, off-key hum. I recognized the tune immediately. It was the exact sad acoustic song I'd been playing on my phone 20 minutes ago when I was crying. My stomach dropped into my shoes. I lunged for the door and yanked the handle. Nothing. It didn't even click. The handle was completely dead. I tried the window switch. Dead. I jammed my finger against the big red emergency pullover button on the tablet, but the screen just glitched out and went completely black. We hit a pothole and the car sped up, plunging deeper into the dark industrial roads. I was locked in a metal box going 60 miles an hour, and this guy wasn't taking me home. I ripped my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking so bad I fumbled it and dropped it on the floor mat. But I snatched it back up and dialed 911. I jammed my thumb against the speaker button, ready to just scream my name, the car's license plate, and anything I could think of before he could stop me. It rang twice. Then, the audio suddenly cut out from my phone and blared loudly through the car's surround sound speakers. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice echoed in the dark cabin. I opened my mouth, taking a massive breath. Help! I'm trapped in a driverless... A loud digital beep cut me off. The call dropped. I stared at my phone screen in absolute horror. A little gray notification bubble popped up at the bottom. Bluetooth call ended by admin. Before I could even try to dial again, my phone screen went totally black, replaced by a spinning loading wheel. He was remotely locking my phone through the car's synced Wi-Fi network. I shoved the dead phone into my pocket and blindly dug through my purse, pulling out my house keys and sliding them between my knuckles. Over the speakers, the guy let out this wet, rattling sigh. The typing had completely stopped. Almost there, he whispered. And then, the engine pitch shifted. I was pushed slightly forward against my seatbelt as the car finally started to slow down. The tires crunched loudly against gravel as the car jerked to a sudden stop on the shoulder of a completely dead, pitch-black road. I braced myself, gripping my keys so hard my knuckles were white. But then, the interior of the cab lit up with flashing red and blue lights. I literally gasped. I looked out the window and saw a police cruiser parked diagonally in front of us, blocking the road. A guy in a police uniform got out, holding a flashlight. He walked right up to my window and shined the beam inside, squinting at me. He knocked sharply on the safety glass. "Miss, "Are you okay in there?" The company's AI flagged an emergency system malfunction and a dropped 911 call. I started bawling all over again, but this time it was pure, overwhelming relief. I dropped my keys on the floor mat. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely grab the manual door handle. I yanked it, and to my absolute shock, the door actually swung open. I basically fell out of the car and into the cold night air, hyperventilating. "Thank God," I sobbed, reaching out toward him. "Someone hacked the car. He locked my phone. He was going to..." The cop stepped forward and caught me by the upper arm to steady me. His grip was insanely tight. His fingers dug painfully into my muscle. I looked up at his face, expecting to see concern, but he was just smiling. It was this blank, cold little smile. He didn't ask if I was hurt. He didn't look at his radio. He just leaned his head down right next to my ear, and very softly, he started to hum. It was low and off-key. The same sad song. The exact same song I'd been crying to alone in the back of a car when I thought no one in the world was watching me. I looked past him at the police cruiser. It didn't have any county markings on the side. It was just a black sedan with a cheap magnetic light bar slapped on the roof. I didn't think. Pure animal panic just took over the steering wheel of my brain. I threw my entire body weight backward, twisting violently against his grip. The seam of my winter coat ripped, and I slipped right out of the sleeve, tumbling backward into the gravel and leaving him holding my empty jacket. I scrambled up and sprinted blindly into the dark shipping yards. I ran until I tasted blood in my throat, wedging myself under a rusted storage container. I stayed there, freezing and hyperventilating, waiting for the sound of his boots, but he never chased me. A security guard found me at dawn. The police found the driverless car abandoned, but the fake cop was long gone. I survived, but I didn't win. I had shoved my dead phone into my pocket, but my house keys were still sitting on the floor mat, and my wallet with my ID and home address was in the pocket of the coat he was holding. He didn't chase me because he didn't need to. He knows exactly where I live.